everyone, and welcome to Thrivecast. I am Alan Wallner, the president and visionary of Conscious Branding. And with Thrivecast, our intention is to focus on you, your business, and your success. And with each episode, we discuss at high level a topic to spark new thoughts and to generate ideas and to push the boundaries of what we know is familiar. And hopefully we may even frame up a new mindset to ignite your business forward and inspire action. And, there's been a lot of kind of things shifting around out there in this business climate. And you may have heard the term conscious company popping up here and there over the last year or so. But maybe you're not sure what that means or even if you should care. Well, today we're going to take a look at what it means to be a conscious company and why you may even want to create a conscious company or a conscious brand or conscious culture. We'll talk a little bit about what that all means and what's involved in being a conscious company. And, why is earning lots of money as a conscious company a really, really good thing? But before we get started today, I'd like to welcome our panelists. I have Chelsey Paulson. She's the COO at Keystone Group International. And at Keystone, Chelsey works as a strategic partner to the executive teams that they're working with to mold and grow the culture and focusing on strategic people initiatives that align with the organization's business initiatives that they're working with. And it's a very fast growing company there, a lot of action. So Chelsey is also an entrepreneurial operating systems implementer, EOS implementer, and she helps businesses develop a culture and a people strategy and aligning the right people in the right seats within the optimal organizational structure. So Chelsey, thank you for being here today.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Alan.
Sure. And then we have David Utts. David is executive coach and advisor. And David, he guides his clients to apply proven principles of conscious leadership while honoring their unique expression as a leader. And which is really important. You don't want to lose, your unique characteristics. And David leads companies into discovering a more conscious approach to culture, teams, and organizational development. And he does this to help support their impact as a conscious company. So David, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks. Thanks, Alan, for having me.
Sure. So why would someone want to become a conscious company, or why would someone want to have a conscious company? When business people operate with a low level of consciousness, it would be kind of the best way to kind of phrase that for right now, around their purpose, if they function with a low level of consciousness around their purpose and impact in their business, they engage in what I would kind of term as a trade-off thinking that creates potentially harmful unintended consequences. Such businesses, they kind of view their purpose as, maybe profit maximization and treat all participants in the system as a means to an end. And this kind of creates a material prosperity in terms of the short term, but in the long term can kind of create systematic problems. So that kind of gives you kind of one side of it. Now, for this next part, if you want to, you can close your eyes and just imagine a business that is created with a dream about how the world could be. And the founders are out to create something of relevance, resonance, and permanence. A business that will outlive them and deliver real value in multiple ways to everyone it interacts with. A business that parents, children, and families will be proud of and aspires to do so much more than just earn money. A force for good, enhancing the health and well-being of society. So keeping your eyes closed still, a business built on love versus stress and fear. Teams that are passionate and committed to their work. A culture filled with collaboration and camaraderie. And then ending each day inspired and freshly committed to what they are doing. An opportunity to be part of something larger than themselves, to make a difference and craft a real purposeful life while earning a living. Okay, if you close your eyes, you can open them. So today, we would like to give you some ideas on how to take what you just imagined and make it real. So I guess let's get this discussion started. We're gonna have some fun here today. So David, when you discovered what a conscious company is, how did that impact and inspire you?
Well, I think I've always aligned with the principles. I think this is what happens for people that may have showed up today. There's something that resonates for you. It just resonates with how you've oriented your life or your business to this time. And for me, that was true. And I think there's two ways in which that resonance can happen. You can have been part of an organization that was conscious, and once you're ruined for the rest of your life because you really want to maintain that flavor of that experience of being part of a company that wants to be a force for good in the world, that creates a culture that's amazing you walk into every day, that has leaders that actually serve you versus the other way around, et cetera. So I think that happens because you have that experience. For me, it happened because I had an internal shift, and that can also be happened. So I became interested back in the early 80s in this whole idea of raising my own consciousness. And again, it kind of ruined me because what happened is I began to crave some more holistic and integrated life, and to see that desire to be more self-aware, it was like a hub for me. And then their spokes went out, and how that related to my relationships, the kind of relationship I wanted to be with a significant other, and the kind of businesses I wanted to operate from. And that happened right in the beginning of my sales career. And I really brought that to heart into my sales career, and saw that if I didn't worry about my commission check, but I oriented in a certain way to my customers, and I really built a relationship with them and served that relationship, I would almost like with great surprise open my commission check every week and be very, very happy with what happened. So, that's kind of for me where it all came from.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, I mean, it's, we kind of could start seeing through reading between the lines here a little bit. There's definitely a feeling of fulfillment. You seem to be more energized with what you were doing, and just part of something bigger than yourself, and just really added a lot of extra fuel to your fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Chelsey, I'd like to kind of hear your perspective around this.
Yeah, so the concept I always struggle with the words, conscious company, conscious culture, is newer to me. But like David, I've really been living this out for decades now. When I was in college, went to the University of Minnesota, and they had a newer minor that was called leadership minor. And so I went through that and came across servant leadership and was just drawn to it. And I thought it was just a great concept. I really loved what it was talking about. The company that I went into straight out of college operated on a servant leadership culture. It was also an employee-owned company. And so when I got into HR, prior to coming to Keystone, I had 15 years of HR leadership experience. And so my philosophy for 15 years was around being employee-centric. What is in the best interest of our employees? What is in the best interest of our customers? Serving each other. That's just always been the philosophy. So when I came across that this actually had a name, this broader perspective, this broader vision is called Conscious Company, it was just like mind-blowing to me that it just makes so much sense. And I just love that there is the concept around it. And I'm happy that we're talking about this because I think it resonates with a lot of people, but what does it actually mean? And so I'm just excited to be here today to talk about what does it mean to me? What does it mean to David? How can you implement these things in your company? And I think it becomes such a big intangible thought process at the beginning. And so what I hope we can get across is some specifics that you can take away and start working on, because it's a lifelong process. You never become completely a conscious company. Part of it is being growth minded and continuous learning and continuous improvement. And how do you keep that going? And so we need to go into this conversation with that mindset, and then also leave this conversation with that mindset so we continue to improve and grow as we go on.
Yeah, I think you hit on some of the big things. It is kind of an intangible, this ambiguous thing out there, conscious company. What does all that mean? But you know, the interesting thing is a lot of people are already doing this in their business. They're just not realizing that they're doing it or what it is. And so this is a way of kind of drawing attention to it and actually kind of creating a business model around it so that you can leverage it for your business to be healthier, to have that greater impact beyond what you thought possible. And yeah, I think I think you guys are right on with this. For me, you know, I had been one of those individuals that was kind of always doing this with my business or the way I was kind of living my life, but didn't really realize it until I kind of went through a pretty dark time in my life and my career. And that's when all of a sudden you start seeing all these, you know, kind of like attracts like. So and when you're kind of in a vibrating at a not such great level, you start attracting all that crazy stuff, maybe not the best clients and maybe not the best relationships, all of that nature. But when you kind of hit that bottom, you start seeing the world a little differently. Then all of a sudden it's like, wow, you know, this is pretty bad. I can change this if I want to. And once you start becoming more conscious, more aware, more present as you're living your life and doing your job, you start creating a new world, if you will. You start attracting the right people. You start finding different opportunities that seem to be a little more aligned with your purpose and who you are and where you want to go with your life. And basically you start feeling more fulfilled, and you start having that energy that David was talking about earlier. And kind of like what Chelsey was talking about, you start this lifelong process of continually discovering more really cool things that you can start bringing into your life and into your business, and then inspiring others and creating a whole culture around it. And you know, that's how it's impacted me. And once I figured out kind of what was going on here and started reading up more on this conscious company stuff, conscious capitalism, then we really kind of jumped in with both feet and really got this thing fired up and ramped up. The funny thing is I didn't really even realize that there was conscious capitalism, conscious company, or any of that until after we decided to call our company Conscious Branding. Then we started doing research on what other conscious things are out there. And then it's like, oh, wow, there's a whole new world. So lo and behold, we had been doing a lot of that stuff. And so it just solidified a lot of things for us. So kind of segueing next to the next question is, so as a result of becoming more aware and more conscious with what you're doing with your businesses and your career, what have you done to shift your business or career and even your personal life to be more conscious? What things have you kind of put in place? And with that, I'll start with Chelsey.
Yeah, so I think there needs to be an understanding, you know, what does this actually look like in companies? And for me, we need to start with the employee first. And coming from HR, that's just natural for me to say. But as the longer I was in HR, the more and more necessary I saw that to become. So if you're wondering, well, where do I start and how do I impact my company? How do I change myself? It really starts with, I think, first yourself, self-awareness. And David, you kind of talked about this too. Understanding where you're at as a person, what your thoughts are, asking yourself the tough questions of, you know, am I trustworthy? Am I empathetic? Do I have a high emotional intelligence? Am I trusting my people? And if the answers are no, it's asking yourself why. Why am I not trusting? Why do I feel like I'm not empathetic? And really digging into that to understand yourself better. Once you understand yourself better, then you're better prepared to help build this out around you. And then the next level is your employees. And how do you build that really conscious leadership around your employees to help really be focused on them? It's a certain servant leadership mentality of serving your employees so that they can succeed, so that your company can succeed, so then you can impact the world around you and your partners and your vendors and your clients and everyone that you're working with, really become interactive within that process. But again, it really has to start with yourself and that introspective thought process, and realizing that you're never at the top. I don't care what your position is, I don't care what you're doing, I don't care how successful you are, you never can stop learning. And I think that is a detriment that so many leaders get into is, I'm the VP of this now, or I'm the CEO of this now, so I've got it all figured out. Or I have to act and look like I have it all figured out and can't show that I have, I'm not competent in some of these areas. And so as leaders, I think we also need to be more open about, it's okay not to have the answers. You can ask better questions and try to solve for the issues together rather than always acting like you have all the answers. And so I think there's a lot that I've done personally. And I think that there's a lot of energy, a lot of stamina that's needed for this. And I always say this to leaders is you need to put on your own air mask first. Make sure that you have your own kind of mindset figured out. All your buckets are full, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, that those are all full and ready to go. And then you can start giving, because then your buckets start overflowing and then you can give to others. And so that's kind of my guidance on how I've shifted myself personally, and then how it's really impacted the teams that I've led, the companies that I've led, the clients that we work with. It's really that self-awareness and understanding, and then going into your employees and understanding them and what are their needs and what are their capabilities. And then it keeps going further into your clients. Well, what are your clients' needs and where are they at? And how can you create impact on your clients and not be all for profits? Because if you go in with the right intentions, and that's one of our core values is impact over profits, we want to go in and create an impact first. We want to give, get, because it happens that way. Is the more you give, you said, where you vibrate at is what you're going to get back. And it's the same thing. If you're giving, at some point you're going to get back. And so that's really one of our philosophies when we go on with our clients is really making that impact, understanding what their needs are, and then serving those needs.
Yeah, I like that. The image of putting your air mask on first is very appropriate. Yeah, because otherwise, how can you lead if you're not in the right disposition yourself? And then also the whole idea of the servitude disposition from the employees, because that then filters through to servitude to your clients. And also one of the things yeah, I mean, you're talking about the energy that's involved. I mean, you start revving up a whole culture. This becomes the fuel for your culture. Even people are energized and want to come to work every day because they're not just going to work now.
Yeah. And the other thing with that is, really the next step after self-awareness, employee awareness, then it's your greater culture awareness. And you need to understand baseline, where are you at today? And then once you understand where are you at today, then where do you want to get to? And then how are you going to get there? So it really becomes, and this is what we talk about at Keystone all the time, is what's your strategy around culture, which is not a common philosophy. People think, oh, well, we have some culture issues, and so we're going to do fun things like go to a Twins game or do a picnic or a barbecue or something. Well, fun is one little piece of the whole culture pie. And so what are the other pieces of culture that you need to think about and improve upon in order to really create that conscious culture? And you really, again, start with the baseline. Where are you at? Where do you want to go? And how are you going to get there?
Yeah, I like that. Just creating a roadmap for getting it done and making it happen. Yeah, thank you. David, so what have you done to shift your business and your personal life to be more conscious?
Well, I'm going to go back to the word we've used a lot, which is really building self-awareness. And I know when I work with my clients, I define that in a particular way. I say self-awareness is about becoming aware of the one who's aware in you. That's really what self-awareness is at the highest level. Yes, and then the outcome of that is you begin to notice things you didn't notice before. And a lot of times that happens because you hit a wall, as Alan, you pointed to. You kind of hit this wall and begin to recognize the value of doing that. But the other thing is that why it's so important, why self-awareness is so important, is we point to neuroscience research that's coming out that says 95+% of the time, human beings are walking around on autopilot. And what that means is we're using our past and our past experiences to process in the moment when we're not self-aware, and we automatically react to the past. So that's what we're doing all the time. So when you begin to put that into perspective for an executive, they begin to recognize that may not lead to a lot of innovation. So, you know, and that, and the way that it's, the best way I can practically apply it for myself is when I've been working with a client rather than my story. It's, you know, mine has been an organic journey. I don't want to get into it, could get too long, and it's ugly at points. But I was working with a guy, Bob, who's the CEO of a media company. And I remember walking in the first day to do work with him. And he was this kind of short Irish guy that had this huge energy. And he got up from his desk and he walked around to me. And he said, I'm so excited to get to work with you right now. What are we going to do first? And long story short, I said, Bob, you got to start working on what your vision is for the company and for your role in this company. And he turned around to me and he said, well, I have problems with my senior team. I don't know what my vision is going to have to do. We got to solve these problems. And I said, well, bear with me. You just hired me and spent a bunch of money. So give me a chance, right? And go off and do this exercise. And not only that, is once you do the exercise, I want you to read this every day. It sounds like a simple exercise. You know, he resisted it at first. But I remember about a week and a half later, I got a call from him and he said, I'm very excited about our session that's about to come up. I can't wait for you to come in. So I was curious about what that was about. And when I went into the meeting, and this is a growth in his self-awareness fundamentally. And I got in the meeting, he got up and he said, I got to tell you what happened. I've done what you've asked me to do. And what I begin to notice is that the prescription that I'm looking at the world through has broadened, and I'm seeing things I never saw before. And I'm recognizing opportunities that are happening moment to moment. For example, I had a guy walk in my office the other day that I knew I had to have a conversation with because he was having some difficult relationship issues with some of his direct reports. And he handed me a book on influence. And I recognized in that moment that was an opportunity to listen to him and what he learned in that book. And then I was able to give him a feedback in that context. And he said, that's the kinds of things that have been starting to happen for me. And I recognize that I've got to get this embodied in the rest of my people. And so that leads kind of the next step that Chelsey was talking about. How do you broaden that self-awareness? It automatically begins to happen when you recognize what you desire your impact to be. And that's making what your aspirations are conscious, right? And putting it out there. And our attention is our greatest power. So that is the greatest power. Depending on where we put our attention is what we tend to create. So if we're coming in every day and just operating our business, that's what happens. We just focus on what we focus on. But when we consciously focus our attention, we begin to shift into new directions like, how are we engaging our people? How are we building a culture that inspires, uplifts, and improves accountability? How do we relate to our customers and increase the value of the customer experience? All that you start recognizing by sharpening our attention on the various areas of conscious capitalism, for example, as spoken about, we begin to focus in a different way and thus produce a different quality of results. The last thing I want to say is, a lot of times people are saying, well, this, you start talking about this and they say, well, profit is important. Of course, profit is important. But if you look at the research on conscious companies out there, and this came out of the Firm's Endearment book that I'm sure you're familiar with. It was the Foundations of Conscious Capitalism that studied places like Southwest, Costco, Chipotle, Caterpillar. And what they found is these businesses operate over 15 years against the S&P. They have their cumulative returns are 14-1. And oh, by the way, Good to Great was a great book, but they outperformed Good to Great companies 6-1. So there is also important to mention that the impact, not only for the people coming to work and for you as an individual, there is an impact on the bottom line and applying this model. And once you get it, you realize, well, maybe being more conscious is a more profitable way to do business. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. If you got to bring in the numbers to this as well, because you can't just have this woohoo culture, if that's what you want to call it. It does pay back to the numbers. They do go hand in hand, and when you can get those working synergistically, it is amazing the power and the life force that starts building within your company.
Yeah, one more distinction, if I could. I think, one of the things I was thinking about from a practical basis, how you explain this, I think conscious companies recognize the value of context and aligning that with tactics. And I think less conscious companies, get everybody, the functions working well, creating their expectations and their numbers and analysis, and they get them to do it, but then they have silos, right? But when, you know, when you're talking about context, and context is the vision and the purpose. That's a context for action. Leadership is a context. Culture is a huge context. Relationships are a context. Well, how do we want to do relationships? Those are contextual. And when a conscious company, what they do is they don't just put those up on the wall, the values up on the wall and forget about it, right? And we see that, I'm sure Chelsey's seen that happen a lot of times. We work really hard in the retreat, we get everything clear, we put it on the wall, and then we go back to normal business. Conscious companies don't do that. They use those mechanisms as decision-making criteria that everything is channeled through. And quite frankly, that's hard work, because it's a little, because it takes, you're learning constantly, you're seeing what you don't know, and you're having to face yourself in a certain way, and you're learning all along the way, but it's also a much more enriching way to obviously do business.
Yes, you are right on. And that's kind of where we come in, is the foundational context. And people often think of their branding as their logo, but in reality, it's the perception people have of you based on the experience you created for them. So what we're talking about here is, can you imagine having a conscious culture, creating these amazing experiences for your customers? They're going to go out there and rave about you and tell other people about you and bring more people toward you. So, you know, that's kind of how it changed our business, as we realized what was happening here in that foundational context and how branding fits in with that. So we kind of created a conscious branding approach, and that's why we named the company that. But it's a way of being your brand, and it integrates with every aspect of your business: culture, leadership, the way you want to position your impact, the value you want to create, the relationships that you have, the emotion you want behind your business. And that's what you guys are talking about. These are all the elements that come together as a culture, as a leader. How are you being those aspects of being a conscious person, being aware? Like you said, I like that. Aware of the one who is aware. So if you start there, and then even what Chelsey was saying earlier too, it's kind of aspirational. It's mapping out who you'd like to be in the world you want to create, and okay, where are you today and how do I get there? That's what this is all about, and it is foundational. If you can't build a house on a bad foundation. If you do, it's going to fall down. So the same thing with your business, the way with building a conscious company. Really work on that foundation. Get it through to your team, through mission statements, posters on the wall, whatever it is, so that everyone is consistently delivering on that daily and living and breathing it and being it. And so that's exactly what you guys are talking about. I love that, because that's kind of how, I guess, kind of how I've evolved and how I've been really tapped into this. And you're right, it does start impacting profitability. If you put others first and you focus on their well-being and their success, their ability to go out and have a greater impact as well, all that starts coming back to you at some point. So on that note, I'll kind of segue into our new question. It's, how does being a conscious company impact the relationships with your clients, your prospects, even your employees? So if it impacts them, you know, do they care that you're a conscious company? So I guess with that, we'll have David.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, how does it impact our relationships? I think, you know, improving, which is one of the founders of the conscious capitalism in Twin Cities, talk about a lot about trust. And, you know, fundamentally, to me, trust, when we're figuring out how to trust somebody, we have like 4 assessments or opinions that we're looking to build that trust. Number one, if I'm speaking to somebody, there's some assessment. Are they authentic? Can I trust what's coming out of their mouth? And is it consistent with what they do, right? There's an authenticity there, that what they say is what they mean. Number two is are they competent to deliver in the scope they say they want to deliver to me? And how do I assess that competence? Because that's critical. If we're hiring a vendor or working with somebody, you want to know they're competent. Do they follow through? That's pretty critical. So the reliability. And the other thing that a lot of times we don't speak about but could be picked up is, do they really care to be in this relationship with me? And that's demonstrated through the other three, but it's also demonstrated in how they communicate with you, et cetera. So if there is this sense that I'm not really listening when we're in conversation, then that's gonna ding at an unconscious level trust. So that's really essential, and really the way that we do relationships with our employees and how we operate with them, you know, as Chelsey was pointing to on the servant leadership model, that speaks loudly to that relationship. Obviously, the customer experience, that's obvious. Our vendors, right? And how we, you know, my best experiences as a vendor delivering services was when I had an HR partner who cared about my development as a coach and my development of my business, and realized that the more they helped me with that in a certain way, not, you know, that there was something else I wanted to bring the highest value I could to that relationship. And so that sense of partnership between vendors is also essential. And then our communities. I mean, and all this is good for our brand, right, Alan? All this speaks, and all those dairy stakeholder groups, to our brand, which is really a relationship orientated thing, right? When I see the logo, I feel good, my heart warms up, and I appreciate what that means to me. And so that kind of can bring people to you. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I like how you start bringing in the community, and your four, I guess, pieces, you know, the trust, the competence, the follow through, and do they care? It's when you start putting all four of those together, you really start seeing a little bit of a model around relationship building and the types of relationships you'd like to foster. So yeah, I really like that. Chelsey, I'd like to hear your perspective around this one.
Yeah, so the question of, you know, does it impact, if you're a conscious company, does it impact your partners, your vendors, your employees? You know, yes, of course it does. If you truly are a conscious company, a conscious person, a conscious leader, you can't just turn that off. You either are or you're not. And so if you are, you're implementing this in every area of your life. It's just who you are as a person. And so if you have that mentality, that mindset is always on, it's going to impact everyone across, not just within your work life, but within your personal life as well. And I think there's a lot of personal benefits you can get from this mindset as well. Which is not, that's a whole nother podcast, right? This is business focus. But I agree with David that, you know, in this, everyone says this, right? Trust is the baseline. And if you have solid trust with your partners, with your vendors, with your clients, with your employees, that means the world, and they're going to stick with you. They're truly going to partner with you and not just be an employee. They'll be a partner in your journey. They're not going to just be a client. They're going to be a partner in the journey. They're not just using you for, you know, one and done for some service or product or offering. They want to stick with you because they trust you. You've built that relationship. And your people always ask, well, how do you build trust? Well, it takes a long time. And David talked about relationships and being authentic. I think so many times people see other leaders or other companies and they think, oh, well, we need to be like that because they're successful. When in reality, you're trying to be someone that you're not. That's going to turn off employees. That's going to turn off clients. And so being authentic to who you are and who you want to be, that's going to build the trust more than anything else. And know your strengths, know where you're strong as a person and as a company, and then build on those. I think one of the greatest impacts of having a conscious company is retaining your employees. Again, I go back to the employees. If we don't have solid, strong employees who are engaged, they want to be here, they want to do good, then your company can't exist. Yes, you have to have customers, but you need to have employees before you can have customers. You can only do so much on your own, right? Sure, if you're a single shingle kind of shop, then that's another thing. But if you're having full-time employees, part-time employees, consultants that you're partnering with, you really need to work on retaining them. And Simon Sinek's latest book, Infinite Game, if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend reading it. His whole concept is there's not winners and losers. Winning, success is all in your own mind. And what does that mean? What are you really comparing to? And we don't have to think in such binary terms of winner loser, either or. It can be both. It can be, you know, it can be neither. It can be somewhere in between. There's all this gray area that we can live in and not be worried about who's winning and who's losing in this game, because it's an infinite game. It doesn't end. Business doesn't end. So it's something that keeps on going. And so when you have that mentality, it's going to positively impact everyone around you in any way that you interact with them.
Wow. Yeah, I really like that. And it's very powerful if you start really thinking about that, you know, it opens up more opportunities for you, because you're not just driven by achieving a certain goal. It's actually, you can go beyond that and you can make it bigger. And that's what I really like about that thinking. Also, when you said earlier, you can't turn it off. I like that too, because that is so true. You know, at the end of the day, with all this, you have to be true to yourself, because if you're not, you know, that's going to impact everything. So I remember a period in my life when I was just taking on any client to take client on to make money. And what was also happening is, you know, maybe I was trying to convert people into a certain way of thinking, the way we did things. And that's not what this is about either, is trying to convert people. It's, you know, people are going to have a propensity toward it or not. And so it's really attracting those individuals who want to have that greater impact, who want to lead with purpose in their business, and joining forces with them, and even bringing them on as your customers, because those relationships are going to be stronger. They're going to be better. You're going to have greater outcomes that you didn't think were even possible. Whereas if you sit there and are trying to convince someone to act a certain way, to be a certain type of company, it isn't going to happen. They have, like earlier we were talking, they have to hit that wall or hit that barrier before they start realizing that, hey, there's something else going on here, and I need to tap into that. But I really like what you have been seeing here, and I think it's right on. And so I guess, you know, I'll kind of segue to that next question, is kind of how has taking this conscious company approach, and David, you alluded to it earlier, how has it helped you to grow or innovate with your business? You know, how's it impacted your profits? How has it impacted your ability to think of new services, new products, new offers, new audiences, kind of new ways of being out there in the market? So that kind of ties in with what's going on today in today's business climate. People need to shift or realign to kind of get the momentum going with their business again. So is tapping into your conscious approach to business, is that a good place to go? And, you know, if you could kind of share that with kind of how you've pivoted, or what, I'm not sure if I like to use that term, but pivoted with your business in terms of drawing out the conscious aspect and leveraging that for your business. So with that, I'll start with Chelsey. Kind of rambled there a little bit.
Yeah. All good thoughts, all good thoughts. So we're lucky because at Keystone, our philosophy has always been around a conscious company approach. And so as far as pivoting, it hasn't really been on our baseline of who we are, our core of who we are as a company. What we've always talked about is you need a solid strategy. Every business needs a solid strategy. But then how do you incorporate the people? How do you incorporate the culture into that? Because if you don't have strong people and a strong culture, you're never going to accomplish all of your goals. But you might for a period of time, but your success will only, you know, success, whatever that is, relatively speaking, will only last for so long. And so that's kind of been our intersection, is how do you create a conscious company so that you have conscious employees, a conscious culture, so that you can have a conscious strategy to then positively affect your clients, your partners, your vendors, and so forth. So we've been in that, and I had sent you, Ellen, a document that I think we're going to post with this that really kind of talks through some of that and some really good questions for newer businesses to think about, or leadership teams to think about, of what are we doing today? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? Where can we maybe start along this journey of creating a conscious company and a stronger culture within our company? Because we don't think of you know, how do you necessarily create new clients? We always want new clients, but we really have that profits or purpose over profits approach. And so we rather go deeper with our clients and helping serve those needs that they might have than just bringing on new clients. And people often ask, well, what's your niche, or what's your market? What's your industry? We don't have an industry, we have a mindset. We want to work with people that are growth minded. They want to grow. They know they don't have it all figured out, and they want some assistance guiding and directing them and helping them figure that out. So we're more about mindset than we are about necessarily bringing on new clients or a certain industry. And so I think when you have that mentality, again, you just start to go deeper within those clients and how can you serve them better. And then your services start to kind of evolve based off of those needs you see. And especially when you're talking about people and culture, you start to see consistent themes across companies. And so you just start to evolve your business based off of the needs that you see. And then you know you're always going to be relevant. When you're serving the needs of your clients, you're always going to be relevant.
Yeah, I really like how you've taken this and you've actually broke out of the box the stereotypical way of defining who your target audience is. You know, mindset is our niche. I mean, right there, you've proven how you can leverage a conscious approach to your business. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're going to go work with people who've got a certain mindset. I mean, that is out of the box. So that's pretty cool. I like that. That's a great example. So David, how about yourself?
Well, I think that, you know, my approach, you know, well, it's always been that way. And I was actually glad to see in 2012 when the book got published, because then I felt like I had my kindred spirits I can hang out with. And that's why I got involved in the, you know, becoming executive director of the chapter there. But I think that the new products and services, and I think Keystone has done a stellar job at this as well. You know, how do we walk our talk? You know, during COVID, there was so many things going on for people, and it still is a very dicey sales environment, if you will. You know, we have to be approaching our relationships really with this orientation of serving them. And, you know, as much as you admit it, we'd like to have more business coming in at times, you know, and you know, during this pandemic, it really is, we have to walk our talk. And I as well with COVID, what I decided to do was simply offer my executive clients safe harbor for as much as they wanted. And we set up conversations, and there was no expectation of paying. And it was more than about leading in crisis, which we had thousands of blog articles out there on leading through crisis. What I saw the clients needed was a place to talk about their own personal concerns and their own fears. You know, they don't have to be so strong in front of their people. They can actually share and have a sounding board for that. And to deal with, I got all these virtual people, all this virtual workforce now. How do I deal with that? And so, and what that led to is me getting information from clients about what was top of mind, which has allowed me to begin to target offers around, you know, supporting your virtual workforce, dealing with self-leadership, which I think is more important right now than any other time than necessarily leading the organization. How do we start with my own self-leadership and begin to create a good virus, if you will, out into the organization where self-leadership can grow and around me? And how can I support others to take on self-leadership? Because they're also, employees are dealing with fear, and they're dealing with, how do I bring myself 100% to work every day? So how can I help teach my clients to kind of create an environment where they're teaching that? So that came out of simply, you know, trying to do my best to serve my clients in that condition. And that, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but that's what when you're walking, you're talking. You know, Keystone did the same thing. You know, new audiences is also the same thing. When you're growing your business, you know, the marketing experts say you got to pick your niche, right? Early on in coaching, I will admit I was in the beginning of the stages. Been doing it for 25 years. Coaching's been around for maybe 28, 29. So around that area. And I was like shooting ducks to get business, because a lot of HR departments were starting coaching programs, right? And I launched and tended to work with technical individuals. So I worked with technical people. I work with technical leaders very well. How to teach them how to be in relationship and why it's important to set context in a meeting. Sometimes that's very basic stuff for them, but how do you teach that to somebody that's looking for a technical way to do that in a certain way, but also get to the heart of what it is? And through that, I developed my intellectual property and serving that client base. And now, as you know, Chelsey pointed to, my clients are not a specific group. They're people with the mindset that Chelsey said, and they're people that recognize that their development of themselves is critical to the development of the business. And they have particular problems that they're facing with burnout, trying to manage up to, you know, people in the organization, trying to figure out how to get their idea adopted within the organization, because it's a good idea that can help the company, but bringing that to the table and getting that adopted. So those are the kinds of things I work on with them, and also their own sense of clarity and confidence, right, and executive presence. So the idea is that I work with those areas, but you know, those are the ways that I kind of deal with new audiences. And then thought leadership, it all came out of that as well. So as I said, the intellectual property grew out of serving my clients.
Yeah, and I like your little description of facing the fear head on and actually mimicking it in terms of you being more contagious around what you're doing for other people.
It's a good virus.
Yeah. Leverage the model, right? So while doing all this, what has been your biggest challenge while striving to be more of a conscious leader, a conscious company? You know, I guess just share kind of some of your biggest challenges around that. So Chelsey.
Yeah. It's hard. It's not easy work. It's not. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of self-reflection and time spent on this. It's not just going to happen. There has to be deep thought put into it. There has to be deep conversations around this. And if you have a company with multiple leaders, everyone has to be on the same page. It's really hard to do this if you have one leader who doesn't agree with this philosophy. I've been a part of a company that we had a CEO come in from the outside that wasn't a culture fit, we thought was, right? We went through the interview process, put them through the whole 9 yards of interviews and assessments and psychological assessments, and you think you make the right decision, but you never know until someone comes in. And it just fundamentally changed the organization. And so you really need to have leaders all on the same page and walking the walk. And it's hard to do. And it has to be a constant focus. It has to be continuous learning. And it has to be a topic of conversation that's on the agenda. If you do quarterly planning sessions, you do annual planning sessions, you have regular any type of meetings or thought leadership type summits, you need to be thinking about this, because it's not just going to happen. And what areas do you need to focus on? And there'll be peaks and valleys. It's not a flat line. It's not a steady incline. It's, you know, you're going to hit the ceiling, and how are you going to break through that ceiling? And then you're going to keep going up. Then how are you going to break through that next ceiling? There's always going to be those layers to break through. And so you got to have the grit, the stamina, the resiliency to do so. And I think especially now, resiliency is one of the top character traits that's necessary to be successful in an individual and in a company. And again, going back to not necessarily having all the answers and being transparent and saying, I don't know. Here's my best guess, or here's what I think, or better yet, what do you think? You know, give me your perspective, and getting the greater good of the communication there, and kind of the group think in a positive way of, let's work together to solve this, rather than feel like you have to have all the answers. So it's hard. It's easy to talk about. It's hard to implement. But if you can figure out where you're at today and where your gaps are, that's the best next step. It's, you know, don't try to eat the whole elephant. Eat one bite at a time.
Yeah, imperfect action, right?
Yeah.
I think you hit on some key things there. Is, you know, having everyone on the same page, that is critical to the success of it, as well as I guess basically it's a lifestyle. It's a way of living your life. Yes, it is a lot of challenges and everything, but it's also brings about some amazing rewards too. David, I'd like to hear your perspective around this.
Yeah, so, you know, as Chelsey pointed to, this is an arduous journey. And I think one of the reasons why people may initially resist it is because intuitively, you know, it's a bit of an arduous journey. Now, the rewards are great. and once you begin to taste the rewards of expanding either a conscious company or the consciousness within yourself, the rewards are there. But I myself, even though I've been meditating since 1982, and I've been in the conscious raising areas of ways of doing that, and I've moved that into my business by getting a master's in OD and going into coaching business, et cetera. I've had my journey. I have an addiction background, and I think there's a lot more people in the organizations that are dealing with that than you know of, especially today. And there's also the challenges of how you and overcoming that was very challenging and difficult, and yet rewarding. And now I'm in a stand where in the right situations, I can help people with that. So that's the reward is always there if you're willing to continue down on the journey. How we react to others. And, I've worked with many executives that say, I just don't understand why I do that. I lose it. And when that happens, I just get triggered and I lose it. Really, that's that, we can beat ourselves up about that, or we can look for the solution, which is to become more self-aware and really understand what has to be healed in us to kind of resolve that issue that allows us to be more of a servant leader. So it's a journey. Once you crack the eggshell, you can't go back either. So once you open up, it's almost like the flower of expansion of that begins to happen by itself. And you realize it's not really anymore, it is my path, but it's happening to me. Something happening within me. And it's also happening with my business. When you start doing this in business, you cannot pull back from it. Because if you do, we've all seen, I know, Chelsey, you've probably seen a lot of culture initiatives where they talk the right talk, but then they didn't follow through, and that decimates the trust in the organization. So you really have to open it up. And, and I think many are still stuck in the old model because in a sense, there's a realization. I'm going to go back to my first point. There's a realization it can be a bit arduous, but again, it's worthwhile because what you're creating is so far bigger than anything you could create on your own that you can't turn back from it. There's much more enrichment than arduous. So.
Yeah, I would agree. It's taking, there's always more things to learn, and I guess there's more beauty to discover. So I think that's a good way to look at it. All right, so this is kind of the last 5 minutes of our episode here, and this is where I usually kind of tap into what's going on here with our audience, and I call them the ABQs. It's another burning question. So here we have one here from one of our attendees. It says, does consciousness as a business virtue also involve non-spreadsheet variables such as ethics, morality, and the balance of fair exchange? So with that, David, I'd like to kind of hear your thoughts around that.
Absolutely. And I think this goes back to why we have values at a business. Certainly ethics are important because they're more refining around that. But again, it's contextual to how we operate with each other as human beings. And when going back to really, truly, while we have a vision, we can only do things moment to moment, right? So the vision is really meant to help us operate consistently with the vision now, because we can't really create the vision in the future. We can lean into it. And part of that is how are we going to treat each other? What are our ethics? And I would say that over time, setting those standards, while important, become less important as people buy into the conscious model. Because when they begin to transform and change, I'm not saying in all cases, and I'm not saying you have to be mindful of this, but seems to be a shift in the way people operate with each other. I see myself less separate from you. And when I see the impact I'm having on you and the impact you're having on me and what we're trying to do together, I begin to protect that more. And you see that with people that really buy into the value. So all that is really critically important, and it's all part of having sometimes very challenging conversations in an organization about what that means and what happens when we cross certain lines and how do we deal with that. But that's what you sign up for when you're a conscious company, to have those, what I call, authentic, courageous conversations about what's important. And that's what was the question you just had is all included in that.
All right. Chelsey, would you like to comment on that? Would you like me to rephrase?
Yeah, not a whole lot to add other than, it's all encompassing. A conscious company is all encompassing. It's everything. It's not just metrics. It's not just employee experience. It's everything that's incorporated in being a business. And so you talk about ethics or integrity, it goes beyond, following policies and following laws and guidelines and things like that. It's what's the right thing to do as a human being. Not just what does the law tell us? What does our handbook tell us of how we should handle the situation? What is the right thing to do, because we are all human beings here? And again, right now with everything, and David, you alluded to this with dependency issues and mental health issues and all of these things being magnified right now, we need to put a lot of human being into our conversations and how we're treating each other and how we're treating our employees and how we're, again, asking questions and digging into things. It's all encompassing. I think that's just the best way to put it, is that any decision you make, any conversation you have can be said and thought about with a conscious mindset.
Yeah, well said. I think that is a good way to wrap all this up too. So nice job, you guys. I really appreciate it. Wow. In closing, I really want to thank David and Chelsey for sharing their insights and wisdom today. And I'd like to thank all of our attendees here. I really appreciate you being part of Thrivecast, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And if you have any follow-up questions, please send them to info@consciousbranding.com, and we will respond to you. We'll also be sending you a follow-up link to the recording of this episode along with some bonus materials. And by all means, feel free to share this with other business owners you think would be interested. Okay, our next Thrivecast episode will be in November. We're going to take a little bit of a break here. We're getting the new episodes queued up, and if you have any ideas for topics you'd like to see covered in upcoming Thrivecast episodes, please let us know at info@consciousbranding.com. And in October here, Conscious Branding is going to be launching its online program called Life Force, Ignite Your Business Success. If you'd like to learn more about it, go to thrive.consciousbranding.com. So I look forward to seeing you all back here in November. And remember, you create your world. So believe in your vision, drive it with purpose, and above all, take action. Until next time, be remarkable.